Chairman Durbin. A very important issue that you have brought before this committee, and I thank you for doing it. I, for one, want people to know that I love using Twitter. But we also know that big tech companies, such as Twitter, collect vast amounts of data on Americans. In the hands of foreign adversaries, this data is a gold mine of information that could be used against America's interest. Twitter has a responsibility to ensure that the data is protected and doesn't fall into the hands of foreign powers. Americans rightly expect that Twitter will protect that information. Thanks to a whistleblower that comes forward, we've learned that Twitter hasn't secured the data of tens of millions of Americans and countless other users. That whistleblower is here today, so we welcome you, Mudge. He comes before the committee today not only as an expert in the field of cybersecurity, but also as a whistleblower. I think all of my colleagues know that I have a great deal of admiration for whistleblowers. I've always said that whistleblowers are patriotic individuals who often sacrifice their own career as well as their livelihood to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Thank you very much for being here. Because of Mudge's disclosures, we've learned that personal data from Twitter users was potentially exposed to foreign intelligence agencies. For example, his disclosure indicates that India was able to place at least 2 suspect foreign assets within Twitter. His disclosures also note that the FBI notified Twitter of at least one Chinese agent in the country, a company, I should say. Based on allegations, Twitter also suffers from a lack of data security. Due to that failure, thousands of Twitter employees can access user data. That data that they don't need access to in order to do their job, yet they have access. And if foreign assets work for Twitter, that means these foreign assets can also access the data. To put a finer point on the allegations, Twitter has allegedly used data it collects and the tools it has to geolocate individuals who made threats against board members. In the hands of a foreign agent embedded at Twitter, a foreign adversary could use the same technology to track down pro-democracy dissidents within their country, but also to spy on Americans. This has actually happened in the past. In 2019, 2 Twitter employees were indicted by the FBI. They used their position at Twitter to access private user data and then gave it to Saudi Arabia. These foreign agents were able to access and provide personal information on more than 6,000 individuals of interest to the Saudi government. Simply put, the whistleblower disclosures paint a very disturbing picture of a company that's solely focused on profit at any expense, including at the expense of safety and security of its users. Additionally, it's been alleged that Twitter knowingly violated a consent decree that it entered into with the Federal Trade Commission 2011. That consent decree required Twitter to address their access control failures. However, Instead of complying with the consent decree and fixing these very serious security matters, it alleged that Twitter executives, specifically CEO Agrawal, intentionally misled Twitter's board of directors. So, I'm concerned that for almost 10 years, the Federal Trade Commission didn't know or didn't take strong enough action to ensure Twitter complied with the consent decree. This is a consent decree that was intended to protect Twitter users' personal information. As Congress considers federal data privacy legislation, I think it's very important that we draw on these revelations about how Twitter views its obligations with federal regulators. Congress should also be mindful of the FTC's ability or lack thereof to successfully oversee these important issues. Twitter also needs to answer questions about its content moderation. It was revealed to this committee that Twitter outsources a great deal of consent moderation to foreign countries. They have close to 2,000 employees in other countries whose job is to screen tweets by Americans. They also lack the appropriate amount of translators to ensure that tweets in other languages are complying with Twitter's own rules. Mudge had limited visibility to content moderation while at Twitter, so these are questions that need to be answered in full by Twitter because we can't expect Mudge to respond to them. Unfortunately, this committee will not be able to get answers about content moderation because Twitter's CEO has refused to appear today. He rejected this committee's invitation to appear by claiming that it would jeopardize Twitter's ongoing litigations with Mr. Musk. Many of the allegations directly implicate Mr. Agrawal's, and he should be here to address them. So let me be very clear. The business of this committee and protecting Americans from foreign influence is more important than Twitter's civil litigation in Delaware. In conclusion, if these allegations are true, I don't see how Mr. Agrawal can maintain his position at Twitter. Going forward, Chairman Durbin and I will continue to conduct a thorough and in-depth investigation. Today's hearing is a part of that process. Thank you.
Thanks.